we're going to get into the pattern drafting, and the biggest thing is observation. When you get shirts that need cuff repair, observe the cuff. I usually use a see-through ruler, and in this particular case, I'm measuring it, and it looks like 9 3/8. There again, I'm going to assume that this cuff even shrunk, so I'm going to say that it's going to be 9.5. But what I would ask the customer, I'd even send them an email saying, does the cuff that you just sent us, does it fit you properly? And if it does, I would go ahead and add an eighth, even though it says 9.5, because if you stretch it, it probably would end up being 9.5, maybe even 9 3/4. So I don't say assume that I'm making it 9.5, and then I'm going on the width, and the width is going to be 2.5. So the width is 2.5. Now, the question I always ask my customer, usually when they call me or they send me an email, do the sleeve lengths fit you now? And if they say, no, they're a little short, then what I would do is I would make this cuff, whatever, maybe the present sleeve length is a 1/2 inch short, I'd make it 3 inch. So when I construct it, I'm going to construct it 9.5 by 3 inch wide. I know he's going to get a good fit on the sleeve length. And again, you can see that this is round, so we're going to assume that this is a round one, and we're going to go ahead and do it. So the tool that I use is a see-through ruler, but you can use a square. Now, the fashion industry has a little thinner one, lighter. You could probably purchase one of those. They're not very much. Or you can use a big square if you're already a tailor or you already have one in your possession. But I prefer the see-through ruler. It's an all-around, it's light, and it's always on my table. And normally what I do is I make sure that the lines, horizontal lines, are on the fold. This paper is on the fold. And the reason I put it on the fold is because I like the pattern to have a little thickness. If you had it on a single sheet, it'd be very thin. I like it because I'm going to trace around it. So normally what I would do is I would just put it on the fold, make sure it's on there, and I'll draw a long line. And I'm going to measure off. I don't like to go right to the end, so what I'll do is I'll draw another horizontal line like yay. Now, we said we're going to make it 9.5, so I'm going to measure off 9.5. Now, some people would say, well, 9.5, that's the finished measurement, and then 1/2 inch for seam allowances. There's nothing against it. I don't do it. I make the exact same size. In this case, it's going to be 9.5. And what I do is I square a line up. I know it's going to be 3 inches wide, and I know it's 3 inches wide here. Then I'll connect the lines and be accurate. Okay. Now, we know that it's round, and I have a template that I use, and I'll include a copy so you can do that, or you can make your own. And what I normally do is I'll put it on here, and I'll just make sure that it's nice and smooth, and I'll go ahead and make it round. Okay. So I have it round. Right now it's a rectangle. I normally use a stapler. What I would do is I would cut the rectangle out, superimpose this end onto the other end, making sure that the pencil mark is on top so I can cut around it with my scissors. Okay, so again, whatever style you have. In this case, maybe you want an angle. You know, whatever size, whatever you decide on your template, you can create your own template. So you'll be consistent, in other words. And now we have a 9.5, and we have a rounded, or we have an angled cuff. And this is basically, and if you make a mistake and say he calls you and says, well, you know what, it's 3, I want a 3.5, just draw a parallel line. And now you have 3 1/4. And vice versa. If you make it smaller, just take it off. So everything starts from the rectangle. So you can have a round, you can have an angled cuff, or any style of cuff that you can see, and you can design it just from the regular rectangle. And like I said, I'm going to turn it over because I've done previously. And again, let me show you so you can see it visually, you can see it better. There's different types of roundness. In this particular one, I've had a little bit different roundness, and you can see that, and angle, And you're going to come across many styles and manufacturers' designs. So basically that's it. Starts from the rectangle. You can create any style, any width, and any length. And again, when we get to the, so let me turn it over again. I have a staple. And let me cut it. I usually use a weight. And let me grab my scissors. And I'll cut the rectangle out first, like I said. I always use weight to keep everything stable. I'll go all the way down. I'll cut the rectangle out first. And be accurate when you're doing this. Follow the point of your scissors. Then what I do is I put the round one on top of the other. Now at this point you can tell whether you've been accurate or not. You can put them next to each other. You can see that I didn't do a very good job in cutting it. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that it's right, because it's easy in the end run when your sewing is right. And then what I do is I make it round. You can just turn the pattern with your left hand and do scissors, and there's the roundness. And what I'm going to do when I go to the machine, I'll actually show you. I'm going to just follow the edge. This will be my interfacing when I cut it out, and I'll just follow around. It'll be easy, and that's why I don't usually include seam allowances. Now, again, there's nothing wrong if you want to. If you want to include seam allowances, you know, I don't. It's up to you. Some people like. I don't like the stiffness in there. I don't like it bulky. So some people, when they're making their cuffs, they add seam allowance. And normally on the bottom they don't. They use a clean finish, which you've seen in the collar making. So it depends. The only thing is when you do this. And in the trimming method, I'll show you how to trim it if you're going to use that method. And that's about it. The French cuff will be covered in a separate tutorial, just exclusively for the French cuff. There's a whole art to that also. And from this, basically, that's what it is. So it's important to ask the customer the questions. Do the sleeves fit you now? And when you're doing a construction, deconstruction, sometimes, you know, you'll ask them, are the cuffs, do the sleeve length fit you now? Maybe they're frayed. Let me pull out the example here where the one was frayed. This one here, it was frayed. So let's say, for example, that he wanted this fabric. I would have to lose probably about a quarter on each side and a quarter on the top side. Usually the bottoms are in good shape, they never wear, but the part that rubs against the skin or your clothing usually wears out. So I'd ask the customer, are the sleeves long now? I mean, if they're longer for him now, it's not going to make a big difference, you know. The whole point is that will this cuff fit him when he loses a quarter? Will it fit him around the wrist? And that's another question you have to ask also if you're deconstructing and losing a quarter on each side. So let's continue.